I remember my family was like, girl, what are you doing? Are you going to get a job? Like, the business didn't work out. Your launch didn't take off. Are you going to go get a job? And I just remember being like, no, I don't feel like that's what I'm being led to do. And they just, oh my God, I just felt so humiliated. Y'all, purpose has a way of pulling on you. It's like this deep inner knowing. And it doesn't matter what somebody else says. Even when you're afraid, somewhere within you, you just feel like, even when you don't know what it is, you know that you're supposed to be doing more. The actual true essence starts at the place of identity and learning your true identity and who you actually are. You cannot be confident being somebody else. Welcome to the Confident Chick podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hey girl, hey. So we're going to get ready to get real raw today. Very unscripted, very vulnerable as I share my story with you. And you may be wondering, well, girl, who are you? Right? Well, just let you know. Hey girl, this is my first podcast. My name is Naya Lemme, my middle name. And I am a girl's girl. I love beauty, everything fashion. I love also living life on purpose. Living life with a meaning, right? And I presently reside here in Atlanta, Georgia. So shout out to all my girlies in Atlanta. Well, let's get ready to get into it because as you can see from the title of the episode, I'm going to share with you guys my journey of becoming a confident chick in Christ. And let me just do a disclaimer. Everybody's welcome to listen to this podcast. Come here with an open mind, please. Whatever your background is, religious, non-religious, you are welcome here, girl. So you can come here and let down your hair, honey. But I'm going to share with you my journey and my testimony and some of the hard things that I have walked through. And I would not be being my authentic self if I left Jesus Christ out of it. So I just have to, just in lieu of being completely authentic and true to myself, I have to make sure that I incorporate that story. Let's get started, girl. So basically, what is a confident chick, right? What does it truly mean to be confident? I know we all know what the word means, but what does that look like in the day-to-day? What does that look like in your individual life? What does that look like in my life? How does that show up to where you can walk in a room somewhere and say, I'm confident? Well, in this time of my journey and my testimony, I have truly been learning, and the Lord has revealed to me that the very core of confidence comes actually, I think most of us know that it comes from inwardly first and then it goes to outward, but the actual true essence starts at the place of identity and learning your true identity and who you actually are. You cannot be confident being somebody else. And I feel like there's always a pull or a distortion, if you will, when we're not showing up in our true, authentic selves. There's so many people in this world, right? But there's only one you. Someone can look like you, someone can do what you do, but they're never going to do it exactly like you. And that's what makes each individual one of us so necessary and so needed in this world today, no matter your background. But I'm about to kick off my heels so we can get into it. Let's take it back because my life has drastically, girl. And when I share with you the rawness of my story and my testimony, I'm sharing it with you in hopes that you find some type of beacon of light in some of what I consider to be my darkest hours. So this journey to being a confident chick started for me about 1.5 years ago. I was working at a salon. I do lashes, I do makeup by trade. So real quick, shameless plug. For the girlies who are in Atlanta, Georgia, baby, I travel. I do makeup. Girl, hit me up. If you're on YouTube, go connect with me in the comments, girl. I'm here. I am here. But anyway, so I was doing that. I've always gone like, so, some people will go into careers that they know they hate, but they do it because it looks good. Yeah, no, that's not me. I've always been colorful and artsy. And so I always went into things that I knew that I liked to do. So I did that for years. And there came a point, one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing, beauty service for my girlies is I love to talk just like this and just have open, candid, and vulnerable conversations about life. And I love to encourage women. And I've always loved to do that. And so that is what I did. And I loved it. But there was something in me to where I truly knew that there was more. I knew that there was something more for me to be doing in life. And, I would pray about it because I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's just not sexy to me to work as an employee. To be so honest, no shade to the employees, but I'm such a free spirit. I didn't want to be an employee. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just go and, start a salon suite, open up a salon suite. There's super low overhead. I could just go do that. But the Lord was like, no. Like when I prayed about it, I kept feeling like, no, that's not it. It was just an inner feeling. I'm like, no, I don't think that that's what I'm supposed to do. And eventually, one day, sometimes the Lord will speak to me through various things. And honestly, he speaks to you through various things too, whether you may notice it or not. So it could be sometime in repetition of like the same message, like everybody you're talking to keeps saying the exact same thing. That could be confirmation. That could be instances of the Lord speaking to you. He speaks through dreams. There's a verse that says he comes one way, but they didn't perceive it. And to another, he comes in a dream, but they did not perceive it, right? So he's speaking all the time. And, sometimes we just have to kind of be still a little bit to pay attention to the ways that the Lord wants to speak to you. And so for me, one of the ways are through numbers. Yes, and I'm not talking about numerology, but the creator of all things created numbers, clearly. And so there are times, let me be specific, there is a significance behind numbers. And for me, it was like one night I had a dream and this particular date on the calendar popped up in the dream and it was 7/11. It popped up like several months before July 11th. And this was July 11th, 2022. I prayed, I asked the Lord about it, and he was just like, he let me know. He said, oh, you're going to have a change in your schedule. And it's going to be in your favor, and it's going to happen soon. And so I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what it meant. Well, honestly, I kind of misinterpreted it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to go like part-time. I'm only supposed to work the mornings at the salon. Then I travel to my clients rest day. Yeah, girl, no, that wasn't it. So eventually, and he would not tell me until 7/11 came. July 11th, 2022 came, and the Lord finally told me that to put in my resignation. And I was like, what? So fast forward, July 11th comes. I put in my resignation. I was so scared to do it. And I wasn't scared to do it because I didn't want to. I had already just said that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to step out. But in that moment, I was just so afraid because I felt like, for one, am I hearing God? Like, am I just hearing myself? Am I truly hearing the Lord? Like, if I do this, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it? And I pondered about it for like 3 days before I finally put it in. I did not put in the resignation on 7-Eleven. I did it probably like 2 days after I typed up the letter and finally had the courage to just, ooh, girl, press send. And it was so scary. I went to the salon. I did like the last 2 weeks. And here's the thing that for me was very intimidating. I don't know if y'all can relate to this, but when you feel like God speaks to you, he don't be giving all the details, okay? Like when it happened for me, it wasn't like I knew what was next. I promise you I did not, which sounds so irresponsible. But I knew, I felt a conviction within me to know that no, it actually is time for you to get up and it is time for you to leave. And I just remember just feeling like, wow, like I'm really about to do this. Y'all, purpose has a way of pulling on you. It's like this deep inner knowing. And it doesn't matter what somebody else says. It's like, even when you're afraid, somewhere within you, you just feel like, even when you don't know what it is, you feel like you know that you're supposed to be doing more. And for me, I did know that I was supposed to be doing more. I was like, okay, I don't believe that I'm going to be lashing anymore like that. So like when I was getting ready to leave, clients would ask me, oh girl, what salon are you going to? Because we'll just go there. You know, they still wanted to follow me. And I was like, I'm not going to another salon. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, follow my dreams. I'll figure it out when I get there. And they were like, some of them, you could tell by the look on their face, they're like, yeah, right. Well, I remember one lady in particular, when I told her I'll figure it out, I said, I'll be led and I'll figure out when I get there. And I remember she laughed because she was like, yeah, right, girl, what job are you going to next? She's like, you just don't want to tell me. And I'm like, no. I mean, that's the honest truth of where it is, what it is for me. After I left, I went into a fast. I did a fast just to make sure that everything just So the reason why you do fasting, let me just say this. Let me back it up and say this. Fasting is you restraining from the things that typically would distract you. Fasting, what you fast from looks different from what other people may fast from. There have been fasts where I have fasted from social media, and it just helped me to be more one with my creator. It helped me to hear the voice of God a lot better. Basically, whatever is your typical day-to-day distraction, you set it in your mind. You set the intentionality. Let's say you want to do a 5-day fast. You say, okay, I'm going to do a 5-day fast. I'm going to restrain from fill in the blank, whatever that thing is that you know typically gets too much of your attention, distracts you from hearing that small, still inner voice. Whatever distracts you from hearing that voice, you want to eliminate those things as best as possible for a period of time. And then in that time, you want to use that free time to now maybe go take a walk instead of getting on social media. Go pray. Maybe go read your Bible in that time. Yeah, that's what helps with fasting. So that's what I did. I went into a fasting period literally the day after I left that job. And I began to get all types of just bright ideas and revelations. And I recall when I had asked God, well, what are we going to work on now that I'm not at that job no more? What are we going to work on? And I distinctively know that I heard him say, you and the businesses. And I was like, me. In my mind, I'm like, well, what work do I need? You know, like, what do you mean, me? There's nothing wrong with me. So I thought, right? But after that time frame, I began to like go really deep with the Lord, like spending, when I say deep, I just mean spending intentional time with your creator. Right. So for me, that's me journaling, getting up early, talking to God. Maybe for you, that's you walking and talking to God, like outside or something. Whatever the case may be, we're all different. But I just remember in that time getting so many ideas. And I was like, oh, wow, I never had these types of ideas. I'm talking all type of business. business ideas. I'm like, they've never flowed to me this way. And so I wrote everything down. One of the ideas in particular was a beauty product. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I have like, oh, I'm just getting all these downloads and ideas. I feel the green light. The Lord's giving me so many instructions with it. I'm like, okay, let me go out and let me launch this product online. I'm gonna do a pre-sale before I place all the orders. And, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm like, this just has to be it. So I get some sales from like friends and family. That's where it typically starts. I get some sales. I'm like, oh, it's working. That's what I'm thinking. And then there came a point to where I was like, oh, I don't even know. So I did not secure my suppliers. This was a beauty box. Let me just be specific. The idea was a beauty box. And for beauty boxes, you typically have a set amount of products from different vendors and different companies. And, you coordinate a theme or something. And, you have different products in the box and you sell it for a month in a subscription plan. So I had already made some pre-sales because I knew the idea was good. I knew it was legit. But I didn't even have the vendors set up. I was reaching out to some companies that I found and stuff. And, I wanted them to preferably be women-owned businesses. And it just didn't pan out. It didn't pan out how I thought it would, right? Vendors fell through. Vendors flaked, which is a whole different topic in itself. Y'all, we really have to be showing up for our businesses. If you say you do something or you sell something, we gotta show up, I would like begin to get quotes from people that they would just fall off. I wouldn't hear from them. It was a hot mess, and I had already had orders that were placed. I was getting so nervous and so scared. And eventually I had to refund all these people back their money. Good thing that they were friends of friends and family, because if it had have been like strangers and people that I didn't know, that would have been so embarrassing. It was already embarrassing, but like people be dragging you. And so I'm just happy that through that experience, it at least was with the furthest. I mean, some of the people I didn't know, but at least it was a friend of a friend, right? And so I ended up having to refund the orders. And I wrote them a letter, an email to let them know why I refunded it and to let them know, like, thank you for supporting me, just to have communication so that they know why I had to refund them. That was pretty heartbreaking for me because so the time period of the conception, the idea, the beauty box, the strategizing, the marketing. I even paid for YouTube and Facebook ads. And if anybody knows, it is hard to set those things up by yourself. It was a time frame of about maybe 3 months of me putting these things together. And so much time, so much effort, so much money. God, so much money. And that was just really my first attempt at business. And boy, it failed miserably. And I spent a lot of money in it. So after that, I was just kind of pissed off. My feelings were hurt. It had been about 3 months. And I was honestly pissed off at God. I was like, I know you did not have me come out here and leave this job that is consistent for me. And mind you, that particular job at the salon I had, that was my first job here in Atlanta. I had just moved. I'm from Florida, South Florida. Shout out to the South Florida girls. Hey. Well, I had just moved 600 miles away. And that was the job that I had. And and I lived on my own. I had my own place. I had my own apartment. That was my first apartment. That was my first experience moving out and, being a big girl, moving out and adulting. And so I left what was stability for me. And I left it to go into the unknown. And I left it really being like, hey, God, I'll take your hand on this one and I'll follow you into what I don't know. And so it's kind of like, you guys know how you may meet somebody, maybe in a relationship, right? And you meet somebody and you begin to put down your walls and you begin to let that person in and you begin to trust them. It takes a lot. I don't know about you, but girl, it takes a lot for me to get vulnerable because I am kind of guarded just naturally. And so to come to a place of vulnerability with the Lord, I treated God like a person. And for me to get to that place of just extreme vulnerability and to feel like I was let down, that hurt me. And I went off. I remember I was cussing at everything. I was like, you got me out here looking like a clown, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was going off. I was so bad. And then after that, I went into another fast. And boy, that was so revelatory. So in that fast, I ended up opening this book because in your fast, when you fast from the things that normally distract you, you end up having all this free time. So I ended up reading. Like, I had this book on my nightstand or in my drawer that I hadn't picked up ever. I remember I went to the store months before I even knew that I was going to resign from my job. I went to the store and there was this particular book that stood out to me. It was called Visioneering. It was the combination of the word vision and engineering. It was called Visioneering Purpose, God's Purpose for Your Life. I didn't read the book. I bought it. I put it in the nightstand, ignored it, forgot about it. In this particular fast that I did, I picked that book up again for the very first time. And it was so crazy because everything in that book was actually speaking directly to me in that situation that I was in. Talking about how vision and building vision with God, it looks so much different than how we expect it. And that just like a little girl trying to try on her mommy's shoes, they don't fit her yet. But one day, through growth, she will be prepared to step into that shoe with authority, and it's going to fit one day. But the author spoke about vision with God being very similar. When God gives you vision, first off, vision is a gift from God, because vision is something that is going to be so much bigger than you. And it's going to impact so many more lives than just your life. It's not just about you. And so oftentimes I have learned throughout the journey that vision, it's going to take development of you. At the time, I didn't know it. It's going to take development of your character. It's going to take development of maybe some of the things that you need to be healed from. It's going to take that inner work, right? Before you can fully be able to step into that big girl shoe, right? Because you have to be prepared to manage well the responsibilities that come with this vision. I didn't know any of that. I read that book a little bit. I didn't finish it yet, but I read it at that time and it was just so revelatory. And it made me put down my walls again. I said, you know what? I took these things and I ran with them. And I never at any point asked the Lord, hey, is it the time to launch this idea? I never did. I just got I got some of the idea and I just took off with it, girl. I took off and ran because I was so happy. And plus, I just, in my own understanding, I felt like, well, this has to work and it's going to work because, how else am I going to make money? That was the first thing I thought. I was like, how else am I going to make money? And so in that time frame, that fast went by, read that book, and shortly after, the Lord began to have me to get up very early. Now, I'm a girl who loves her beauty rest, okay? I am not a natural morning person. It takes a lot for me to just get my butt up in the morning. So yeah, that was already hard, but he began to just show me to just get up early, like at 5 a.m. And so I committed. And so I began to get up early with the Lord and began to just journal at 5 a.m. in the morning. And when I tell you, that was some of the most amazing times of just rest, mental clarity that I had ever experienced. I would wake up and I would immediately get ideas for things and blueprints, and I would just write everything down. And I began to realize that that first business launch failure was a small product to something much bigger that I was being called to build. And this thing that I was going to be called to build, now called the Confident Chick, is something that hit for me at my core because I struggled so much with confidence in ways that I didn't even know. Yes, some of it's outwardly, but as I told you before, that true confidence actually starts from a place of identity. And I was running. When I tell you running, I was very inspired. And, you know, I didn't quite know what God was trying to pull out of me. I just remember just being like, oh, you want me to like, what do you mean teach them? Like he would say things like teach them. And I'm like, oh, you mean like makeup? Like, yeah, I could teach them how to do makeup. That's really easy. Well, he kept, like, I just knew that it was something so much bigger than teaching some makeup classes. And I'm just like, well, how, like, what else would it be? And he just began to reveal to me what he saw confidence as. If y'all ever, just a little tip, when you're praying and stuff like that, and even if you've never prayed before, when you're talking to the God of the universe and you're just quiet and you're still and you're praying, you can ask him questions, right? You don't just have to sit there and just tell all your problems and just be like, okay, bye. Like, you can, I mean, tell your problems too, but you can actually ask the Lord questions. I began to ask him what confidence really was because I know in my life, I'm like, I don't think I'm actually confident. And I had to begin to wonder what that looked like. And the revelations that he gave me were crazy. And it's really the basis of, girl, why I'm here today on this podcast and on this YouTube, because I'm starting a community. And it has been extremely hard, like extremely hard for me to even come to this point of sitting down and just filming and talking about it. It has been such a journey. And I remember he began to reveal to me that confidence at its very core started with identity, and that you needed to know who you were. You needed to know who you were created to be before you could ever exude confidence. He showed me that the next level of confidence was your purpose or what you're placed on this earth to do. And he was letting me know that what you do should come from a place of who you be, the core of your identity, and not the other way around. He began to also let me know that the next layer was outward. We began to move to the way that you present yourself to the world, because how you present yourself really actually does matter. You should be doing it in a way that shows your true personality and your style and nobody else's. And then lastly, talk to me about influence. Like, true confidence is on that last outer layer. It's your influence. It's your gravitational pull of what makes people draw into you, because we all have it, whether you feel that you do or not. And so when I began to receive these complex things, I was like, wow, that's kind of deep. At least it hit me deep. Girl, I don't know how it's hit you, but I was like, oh, that's deep. It was something that caused me to kind of ponder on it for some days. But all that being said, I would write this stuff down and I didn't really move in it. Honestly, I did. I didn't move in it because I really didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do with that? And so I felt like I was supposed to be on YouTube, but I'm like, I just wasn't comfortable. I felt like, well, who's going to listen to me talk about this? And what does this mean for another woman? And, is she walking through? Basically, I felt like, okay, well, I have not become this pinnacle, if you will, of a confident woman yet for me to sit in front of other women and talk to them about confidence. And I never thought about it as a progressive journey. I never thought about it like that because I was just dealing with so much. And so I didn't show up. I ran. And in the midst of me running, I knew that I wasn't necessarily called to go to another traditional job. I knew that. So I didn't. I was like, okay, well, I just got to I got to get some clients or, I just have to make some stuff work. And so, that's what I did. I did makeup clients sporadically, but it was not enough to supplement my income. And I remember I began to come up short. I ran out of the money from, the past paycheck, the past job, and things began to get really tight. I remember when I noticed the first bill that ever got late was my utilities. And I was like, oh crap. And I freaked out. I was so scared because prior to that, let me tell you something. So I've had a financial background to where my mother is extremely talented in the area of financial stewardship, management, and literacy. And so I just followed what she taught me. I knew how to save money. I had opened up my Roth IRA. I was investing at the time crypto had blew up and I had some good investments in crypto. I was investing, I was saving, I was a responsible girly, okay? I like my shopping, I like my finer things, but I was still responsible with finances. Prior to this happening, I had never even had a late bill ever. I didn't even know what happens when you pay a bill late because I had always paid early. I don't even think I paid my bills due date. I always paid them early because that's what my mother raised me to do. So that's what I did. I paid bills early. So when the very first bill, that Georgia Power, honey, when that Georgia Power was late, and I didn't even know they had grace periods back then. I didn't know that. So I freaked out. And I remember I went into one of my investment accounts and I was like, okay, well, I'll take some out of here. The bill is not that expensive. I'll just take some out of there and pay it. So, that covered that and that was fine. But then other things began to fall behind. And I remember the first time I did not have enough to pay my rent. And I was like, oh crap, I'm kind of short. And I didn't know what to do. I had never been short before. I had never been late. And mind you, again, this was 2022. So this was after the pandemic. This is after COVID. So even in COVID, when I tell you, even in COVID, I still had money and I still was paying all my bills on time because I don't know if you guys know, but at least here in Georgia, in the pandemic, girl, they had waived people having to pay their rent for a certain period of time. I don't know how long it went, but I just know I kept paying mine. I didn't have a problem with that. That was back in 2020. I didn't have a problem. I was working at a salon. You best believe people were still coming to the salon getting beauty services. There were people who were driving all the way from Tennessee to get their lashes done. I kid you not, in this pandemic. I kid you not. We were busy and I was making my coin. And so, I just say that and say that I had always had it. So at this time period, fast forward by 2022, when I had got that first, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to be late. I called them because I don't know what else to do. So I called the rental office and I'm like, hey, I'm a little short this month. I need a few more days. And he was like, well, hold on, because, we got a wait list. And I said, a wait list? I was like, people be on a wait list to pay their rent? I didn't know. I didn't know. And he got my name and he got my information. He said, yeah, you have good standing with us. So, we'll give you an extension. I was like, okay. And so I can't remember because this was 20, girl. At this point, it's a year and almost 2 years ago. I think I did have it. I think I was late, but I was able to get it that first time. But as I said, the money was dwindling. And God had not told me to go get another job. He kept talking to me about building this community. And I'm just like, again, I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I didn't do it. I put it down. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to keep taking some makeup clients and trying to build my clientele because what are you talking about? A community? I know you did not call me up this job to build a community. That sounds crazy. I'm like, because I could have done that while I was still working there. But that's not the way he had me to do it. And at the time, I did not understand. And so bill after bill became late. And I remember having months of rent missing. And it was embarrassing. It was humiliating. I was ashamed because I don't know what culture you ladies are, but as a Black woman, we be on our stuff. Like, we handle things, we take care of ourselves. I'm single. And so it was like almost like, I remember my family was like, girl, what are you doing? Are you going to get a job? Like, the business didn't work out. Your launch didn't take off. Are you going to go get a job? And I just remember being like, no, I don't feel like that's what I'm being led to do. And they just, oh my God, I just felt so humiliated because, when people don't understand something that you may be walking through or experiencing, I guess sometimes, and they don't do it in a sense of trying to be hateful to you, but it was hurtful because, some of the things that close family would say. And I now know that it wasn't out of a place of them trying to be nasty. They were just trying to protect me, but they didn't understand the journey that I was called to. Hell, I didn't even understand it at the time. But, here it was. I was a few months behind on rent, and the Lord told me to join this. There was a business community. It was like a business mastermind. And it was full of different entrepreneurs who were at different levels of their business. Some of them were, making 6 figures and up, and some of them were in the beginning phases. And I really felt like he was like, go join the next cohort. And I was like, okay. So I go on the website, I go look at the price. It was $550 a month. And at the time, I couldn't even make my rent. I had drained most of my investment accounts, to try to stay afloat. So I was like, Lord, I don't have no $550 to be paying for this. I don't have that. And so I was like, I really don't want to join, but I really knew that he told me to join. And so I was like, ugh. And I joined. It was like my last girl. I pulled that money. I think I had like $700 in my account at the time. I pulled out that $550 and I paid for it. And I did that first month. And in that first month, I kind of didn't know what to expect. They broke us down into groups. And we had accountability groups that would meet every week. And so they chose us by rank. They put us in the accountability group. And I remember one particular week, there was supposed to be 5 of us. Nobody got on the call. It was just me and another girl. Nobody else got on the call but her and I. And for whatever reason, we're just talking. Because at that point, we're like, well, hey, we're here. Let's just talk about our wins for the week, some losses, and let's just, get to know each other and chat it up. And she felt led to be vulnerable with me. She said, I don't know why, but I just feel like led to share my story with you of experiencing homelessness. And I was like, why? I'm like, she doesn't know me. I wouldn't have told no stranger that I was dealing with rent being late and that I was struggling in bills. And I wouldn't have told no stranger that. But she shares with me her story, and I was like, wow. And it caused me to open up. And see, I want to pause there and just say, you never know who your vulnerability can help set free. By that woman on that phone, it was just her and I. For some weird reason, nobody else was on the call that week. So it was just her and I. And for her to feel the need to bring down her wall and to share with me something that to a stranger, essentially, something that was, present and real for her and vulnerable for her, it allowed me to feel the access to feel free to also be vulnerable. I felt free. And also, you never know who your vulnerability can help, and you never know the resources that somebody else can have to help you. Now, let me tell you the rest of the story. I told her that I was struggling in my rent, and she said, well, actually, I worked for an agency that helps with rental assistance. I can actually help you fill out an application. Do you want to meet somewhere this week? I was like, what? First off, I don't know, y'all. I was kind of green. I didn't actually know that people be out here struggling with rent until it happened to me. And I didn't actually know that there were actual government rental assistant agencies that helped people pay their rent. I did not know. And so fast forward, I'm not even honestly sure what to do. And I remember I went to the leasing office and I was like, can I speak to the manager? Starting to be behind the lid. It just, rent being late. I just need to talk to her. And, I told them that I was getting a rental assistant company. They were going to be contacting me soon, just letting them know because I had never been late the 3 years that I lived there before. So I had just wanted to explain, integrity. I was like, I just need to explain. And I remember them being like so nasty. Maybe they had just, I don't know what these people deal with from day to day. And maybe they had dealt with people being late before or people just not paying their stuff. They were like, listen, look, we're gonna, they were like, we're gonna file an eviction on you. And I was like, oh, oh. And they were like letting me know, we're gonna file an eviction on you. We can't wait. And I remember talking to the property manager, and she was just speaking all this death over me. I want to tell you something. Even when you are walking through hard times, do not come into agreement and do not allow people to speak death over your situation. Something can look dead and it not be dead at all. It can be in transition. There's always a solution to something around the corner. You don't know necessarily when it will come, but do not come into agreement with people speaking death over your life. That might be what they do in their life, but you don't have to accept it as your truth. Because the second you come into agreement with it, you've just allowed it to govern you and you've allowed it to be your God. This woman was like, you're never going to get approved to live anywhere else. She was going off. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's taking this real personal. I'm like, she is taking this so incredibly personal, like as if I ain't paid her rent. I was confused. And I had explained to her that this was my first time experiencing this. And I told her, I said, listen, this agency, I've never worked with them. They're just taking a long time to get back with me. They emailed me to tell me they got my stuff, but they've taken a while to assign somebody to me. I'm letting you know this. I've never been late in 3 years I've been here, including the pandemic. I always paid on time, but it's like they didn't matter to them. They were just nasty with me. And finally, girl, and that was about 2 months waiting on this agency. And when they did assign somebody to me, the person that they assigned was like incompetent, no shade, but truly incompetent. He did not care if I lived or died. I don't think he wanted the job. He was just kind of like, I don't know, but he was like, there's a glitch in the system. And I had to keep going back and forth with the apartment complex and this agency because they were like, we don't see it on our end of the system. And the other company was like, well, we don't see it on ours. And I'm like, well, why don't y'all get on the phone and talk about it? But instead, I had to be the middleman, and it was a mess. And I was like, this just can't be. Like, this can't be. This can't be from the Lord. This, why did I join this mastermind? Why did I spend that $550? Just all the things. I had so many questions. And I just remember one day I went to sleep. My parents actually were in town, my mom, because she was worried about me. So she was like, I'm coming up there because, girl, what's wrong with you? So she was like, I'm doing a wellness check. So she was up there with me. And one of those nights, I remember I went to sleep and I had a dream and I saw a letter. And this letter was a letter from the rental agency saying that they had paid what I owed in full. And they had just given me an approval letter. And I woke up from the dream. I was like, what? And I had such peace about it too. When I woke up, I was just like, I remember I called my dad, I said, Dad, I said, I know it looks like this. I know these, it looks a hot mess. And these people are, it's taken a while to get this stuff through. But I told my dad, I said, I had a dream that I saw the acceptance letter. I said, I don't know, but I just feel like it's going to be okay. So fast forward, the same issues keep happening. They're just like, yeah, no, we don't have this paperwork. You need to go talk to this company. You need to go talk to your property manager and just all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, as the months, at this, time is of the essence because the property management, they did indeed file eviction on me. And so I was like, oh my God, if an eviction, as y'all know, that's when the court legally, it's when you haven't paid your rent, and it's when the court legally makes a decision of you having to get out. So I was like, oh my God, I need to hurry to get this money from this assistant company so that I can pay this off to stop the eviction so that I don't end up being homeless. So I was so scared. Girl, like I would literally be crying about this stuff. There was a time in this time period, I distinctly remember I cried every single day. There was not one day that I didn't cry. I remember my birthday came up November 2nd. Hey. But I remember my birthday came up and I remember I was like, I just want one day where I don't cry. And yeah, that wasn't a day. Honey, I cried that day too. So fast forward, I was like, okay, I need a plan B because this ain't working. I was like, I don't know why I joined this mastermind. I don't know why I left this job. I was like, but I got to hurry up and get some stuff together. I was getting some clients, but it just wasn't enough clientele. And so I had a friend at the time who was living in this house over near, oh my God, what area of town? Druid Hills. And if anybody knows that in Atlanta, that is a nice area, Druid Hills. So she said, well, the guy who's overseeing this house, there's this room that's available. They're looking to fill it. Let me give you his number. And so I said, okay, you can give me his number, but don't tell him. I said, listen, I don't know when or if I'm going to be able to get into that place, and do not tell him that I'm battling an eviction. Don't tell him that. So she ended up, I don't know if she didn't hear me correctly, but she gave him my number instead of the other way around. So she gives him my number and he calls me up out the blue. And he's like, hey, I heard you're interested in moving in. And I was like, oh, possibly. And so him and I are on the phone talking. He shows me on FaceTime the room. It was spacious. The closet was big, your own bathroom. It's in a nice area of town. My friend already lives in the other room. It seemed clean and nice, a nice, clean cut neighborhood, nice suburb. And I said, and it was kind of to where it wasn't done through a rental agency. And so I was like, ooh, they may not check my background. So I was like, well, if I want it, how much would I have to pay today? And he said, like 700. So I had 700. It was my last 700. I took it out of I think I took it out of my Roth account. And it was like the last that I had. And I said, okay. And I told him, I said, well, send me your information. I'm going to go ahead. And I said, and you're not going to check it. I said, so if I give you this money, the room is mine. And he said, yeah, it's yours. He said, I just need that for your rent and your deposit. He said, that's the amount. And I said, okay. So I said, well, I said, well, let me move. I said, well, let me get the money to you. So fast forward, I literally was about to pull up my, get the information I needed. And then I get a call on the other line. So I tell him, I said, oh, hold on. I have a call. And I pick up the phone. I say, hello. And it's the guy from that agency, the rental agency. And he goes, did you go and talk to the people at your property management? Because I'm about to close this case. I'm about to close it. And I said, no. And he was like, well, go down there and go right now. And I'll be on the phone with you and I'll just talk to him. Hurry up before I close the case. And I was like, now normally, if I was in a position to where I needed help, I would have been like, Negro, who are you talking to? Talking to me like that. But listen, I was in a vulnerable position. I was like, okay. So I go literally run downstairs. I jump in the car. I go to the front of the building, to the rental, to the property management. And I come in there. I was like, can I talk to y'all? I think I have the money. And they're like, yeah. So I put the guy on the phone. They're working it out on their system. Because, that's what they do for their job. I don't understand why it was taking so. Anyway, they work it out. There was a glitch in the system. They find out they have to receive the money through this, blah, blah. They're on the phone, they're working it out. And so, they're coming to an agreement. And then he gives me the phone. He said, okay, it's all good on our end. We just have to wait for them to send the money. I get back on the phone with the guy. He said, yeah, so I put your application through, it should be. He said, we're just going to have to ACH into your account and you're going to have to pay them from that. And I said, okay. And he was like, give me your routing and your account information. And so I was like, okay. I'm like, oh my God, is it about to work? So I literally, ACHs, depending on your bank, it takes maybe between 1 to 5 business days. I was on pins and needles, girl. I was like, please let this go through. Please let them not be like, oh, I didn't put anything past them that possibly maybe they'll just drop the case and be like, oh, too late. So, I was kind of nervous for those like 3 days. And then I think maybe on the third day or the fourth day, I checked my account, the money hit. And I checked my email, and that exact letter that I saw in my dream was the exact letter that I got in real life in my email. They paid off. So I was late on rent. I believe it was at that point about 4 months. And they were willing to pay all of my back rent. And they were also willing to pay up through January's rent, January 2023. When I checked the account, I didn't realize it at the time. Of course, I sent the money to the rental company to pay off my rent. I used all of it for that. But when I looked at the amount, and it stopped the eviction as well. Remember I told you guys that God sometimes speaks in numbers, right? Remember I told you that I had to pay. He told me to get into that master's mind, that business master's mind. I got on the phone with that girl. And in order to pay for the master's mind, it was $550 a month. This government agency paid $5,500 of my back rent. Ain't that like 10x? out of faith, because I did not want to join this mastermind, out of faith, I invested my last $550. I, on my own, even if I didn't run out and get a job, who gonna come up with $5,500 overnight to be able to stop an eviction case? Even if you get a job today, you can't pay that off in time. And to get that money back to me tenfold, all of the back rent paid, and a couple months of my future rent paid, I was speechless. And the fact that I saw the acceptance letter in a dream, I was speechless. I was like, is this real? It was like a breath of fresh air, because I was literally in that apartment scared out my mind that they were just going to come. I had never been through any type of eviction process. And for me, that moment was just confirming that I wasn't alone, and that God did hear my cries, and that the nights that I would stay up crying my eyes out in fear, and just feeling all type of feelings like maybe I gotta move back home, or maybe I just have to start all over again. You know, I it was just like, wow, it's paid off. And in that moment, I said, okay, maybe God's somewhere in this. Now, let me circle back and say, even when that happened, my butt did not still get up and go really ask him and build this community that he called me to. I kept trying to get clients in other places. I took forever to get on YouTube. And, you know, fast forward, the rent is paid and stuff like that. So then eventually I began to be like, okay, let me get on YouTube and let me try to start this confident chick thing, this community. Let me try. And I began to just get in a place with the Lord again of just quiet stillness, turning off all the distractions and the noises that were in my way. And I heard him oh so clearly. And I began to actually have content. Remember, I told you guys about the framework before of what a confident woman is, what confidence looks like in the Lord. And he began to put lesson plans to that framework. And even right now, it's on my YouTube. So, girl, if you got some free time and you want to watch the actual lesson plans, this stuff is far beyond my wisdom. It truly comes from the Lord. I have no PhD and I have no DR dot before my name, but the things that he was downloading to me were so revelatory. It's kind of low key like a course, e-course. And I broke it down into maybe 4 or 5 YouTube videos. It's in a series called the Confident Chick series, and it's on my YouTube. And so, girl, go watch it. So I built that out with the Lord, and that was pretty decent, and it became to a point where I felt good about it, but it just wasn't picking up the traction, and it certainly didn't pay bills. I was getting clients sporadically, but money was getting dry again. And I was like, okay, I did what you said with this confident chick. I did what you said with this community, but it's not taking off. I was getting a few views, and I'm like, oh my God. For the work that I've put into this, I'm like, it's just not gaining traction that is needed. Ain't nobody watching this. And so, I kind of was slowing down my momentum with the consistency of it, and I kind of just began to stop. And I remember after the rental assistant agency, so I guess they began to run out of funding from the government. And so they let me know that, we're only going to pay up until January's rent. So your January rent will be paid for, but that's it, because we're out of funding. So I was like, okay. I can get this. I'll get it. I'll be able to cover it. Well, long story short, I wasn't. I wasn't able to cover it. This was February. And for some reason, they were out for my blood, baby. I know that I wasn't paying it. And I know that it took a long time for the rental assistant agency to pay the late stuff. But when I tell you this particular property management, I think literally by February 5th, because remember, January was paid. February 5th, they filed eviction on me again immediately. They did not waste time. They were like, we're tired of this girl. And they had filed on me. That happened right in the height of me posting these Confident Chick series videos on YouTube. You're listening to the Confident Chick podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And for those on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Now, this is a midpoint for part 1. Come and join us again next week to hear the rest of this crazy story, child, of my journey to becoming authentic and confident in who I'm called to be. So come back next week as we wrap this up, and of course invite you in on the ride as well for part 2, and I'll see you then.